1 week season.
1 week season, fam, La Familia. Welcome back. It is, what day is it today? Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. We are headed into week 3 of the NFL season. Things rolling along here week by week, getting more information, more, binks within the 1 week season familia. A lot of good stuff going on. We are here every Wednesday. We're here every day with a FanDuel Labs show. You get to see all the different faces throughout the week, but Wednesdays we are focused on FanDuel. It is myself and my good friend Maximus, aka Steve. How are we doing today?
Happy hump day, as they say.
Yes.
So far, so good. How are you, sir?
Mike. If you remember that old commercial. I'm doing well. Had a good week too. Did fine on FanDuel. Made a little run on DraftKings. Had a lineup finish 25th, I believe, in the flea flicker on DraftKings. That's their $5 GPP. It's like 70,000 people, I think. So good finish there, and then took 15th in the single entry $50 on DraftKings. So had a profitable week there. Broke even. Had a lot of really good lineups on FanDuel. Had like 50% Marvin Harrison Jr. And then a lot of James Conner, Kyler Murray, Chris Godwin, Malik Neighbors. So didn't have quite the right combinations and didn't really have any Kamara on FanDuel. Had a little bit on DraftKings, but all in all, it was a good week. Excited for week 3. I do the afternoon only content, and this is like an awesome afternoon slate with 5 games and a lot going on with those. So yeah, I'm stoked for week 3. How was your week 2? The honeymoon phase, was it like a Super Bowl letdown?
It was even keel, which I'll take. You always take weeks where you can relatively break even, after the big week 1 for me. The usual tournament I play that we've talked about periodically, 2 of my 5 teams placed across the money line, so I'll take that. I also played in a few other contests where I had some minor placements making over the money line, but nothing big like week 1. But we look onward to week 3, and you came to the party early before the field on Marvin Harrison Jr. That's good to hear.
Yeah. And on FanDuel, it just made sense. It's one of those things where, so his price, DraftKings, the pricing, the salary structure is a little different. The salary cap's smaller. So his price was $6,900 on DraftKings and only $6,500 on FanDuel. So he was priced like in the mid-tier guys, and he still was only like 5% owned, which I kept feeling like I was very in on him, had a ton of him, but I also was like, I felt like it was going to be one of those things where the ownership projections say a guy is going to be like 5, 6, 7% owned, and then the games start and he's like 14, 15% owned. But yeah, he came in, it was like 5.8 or something, I think, in the contest I was in. So yeah, that was, I was surprised. He's a stud. Everybody kind of overreacted to week 1. But we see that happen every year. And now this week, there will probably be some overreactions to week 2 as well. So we can get into it. We can start building. There's 12 games on the slate this week? But there's a lot of good ones. There is a lot of like change going on, with the Panthers benching Bryce Young, so many injuries and stuff. So there's just like a lot going on. So let's just get into the lineup, because I feel like there's a lot to kind of sort through this week. So let's start doing that now. So I've got the Sunday Million up. That's just the contest that I opened up. Steve, the contest that you usually play, is it the normal size 30K this week?
No, it's reduced to 25K. It's called the NFL Touchdown. It's a 5 entry max, 65 a team. I did notice that they kind of do this. We were talking about this last year a little bit, but they kind of variate throughout the year. So this time around, it's first place is only 3,000 instead of 4,000 the week that I won it week 1. And there is more entries this week than there was last week. But it's still a good percentage of the field overall gets paid at 90 spots on 437. That's more than 20% of the field. But yeah, it's usually 30,000, so it is down to 25,000. There's actually a 3-entry max tournament, however, that is a really good deal I came across for FanDuel this week, and that actually has the $4,000 first place, which it usually doesn't. So it's interesting how they kind of shift some of these prices around.
Which one is that?
That one is
$15, the onside kick?
It's $15 a team, 3-entry max. Yeah. That's an interesting one this week because it's like almost 25% of the field is paid when I calculated it, and then or 23%, something like that. And then there's 4,000 first place, and there's obviously more entries with 1,500, and that's more than usual too. So it's it's interesting how they kind of move.
I've noticed you get that a lot on a lot of these FanDuel contests. The first prize is pretty good a lot of times, and they are doing more where they're paying out more of the field. What ends up happening is you just got to be prepared for it. Is like 6th through like 15th place. It's like a huge drop off. So when you have those teams that are in contention, sometimes it stings a little more if they don't get there. But you kind of you got to give it up somewhere. And you're either gonna. It gives a little bit of the best of both worlds where you can have a little bit bigger payday if you do hit the nuts, but you also give yourself more chances to cash, which is always nice and helps you sustain. I've got the Sunday Million up, $15 tournament. The first couple weeks it was first week it was $5. Last week it was $15, but it was a little bigger each of those weeks with $1 million to first. This week it's only $250K to first, so it's like the prize structure is a little bit better as far as like it's not such a significant drop off. Like it was like $1 million to first last week, and then I think it was like $100,000 to second and $40,000 to third. So it's just like that would really sting. So it's a little more level here, and then they also I didn't even realize they were doing it, but on my account. Afterwards, I had like bonus cash. So they gave some cash back for each entry. I don't know if they're going to continue doing that, but they didn't advertise it. So I thought it was like a poor lack of marketing there. Like last week, I maxed it and it was $15 an entry. And then I got $2 back for each entry. So got a nice little bonus in my account.
Was there any overlay?
There was slight overlay each. Yeah, the first week there was some overlay. Last week there was a little bit. Like they still covered themselves. Like I think last week the total amount of entries could have been up to 176,000, and they ended up with like 156 or something. So there was like. But if you like multiply it by 15, like they still covered the prize pool. They just didn't make their full rake on it. So yeah, anyways, let's get to building. Where are we starting this week, Steve?
So I got 2 spots on the face of it. I definitely like. One's going to be very popular based on last week. And the bring back can be tough. And then the other one is very concentrated, and it's probably going to still be under the radar, I think, even though they've had a good first 2 weeks. So let's go to honorable mention to the Detroit-Arizona game, but we're going to go with the Seattle Seahawks at home against the Miami Dolphins. Geno Smith would be the quarterback here. Clear stacking partners with Metcalf and/or Jackson Smith and the Jigba. We're not quite sure about Kenneth Walker's status yet. So there's also Zach Charbonnet, who's a pass-catching running back. I think would be viable to attach to a core stack maybe. I have a clear bring back spot I like, which would be De'Von Achane for the Dolphins. I figure with Skylar Thompson most likely starting, I think I read Miami signed Tyler Huntley, but
yeah, he's on the practice squad right now. But like a quarterback usually isn't going to start in 5 days. But
so I think De'Von Achane with the short passing checkdowns, I think that's more Skylar's game than the deep ball. We don't have much of a resume with him, I guess, of work. I know he was pretty good in the playoff game against Buffalo, if I remember. Wasn't bad when he came in. But so anyway, that would be my start. Geno Smith with DK Metcalf. If you wanted to double stack him, I think Jackson Smith and Najigba is a good price, and Zach Charbonnet is a good price. So either one of those guys, I'd be fine with. I definitely want Achane as the bring back on that. I have a couple of other players that could make a skinny stack that I really like their prices this week, and a couple defenses I like. But starting here, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, I think just the single stack is fine. I think building around this game is fine, but I don't necessarily see it turning into like a true like wild shootout. And I think the nature of this slate, there's 12 games. You've got the KC Atlanta game on Sunday night. You've got the 49ers situation. I think that's probably what your what your second choice was. Is that what you were alluding to?
I was originally going to go with the 49ers, but then Hilo covered them yesterday, and I don't want to copy. I don't want to replicate.
Yeah.
Got to go with somebody different. So 49ers though too.
We've got they're going to be somewhat concentrated, and the Rams defense hasn't looked great. Baltimore, Dallas, Detroit, Arizona. You've got Philly, New Orleans, even like Houston, Minnesota. Like there's just a lot of spots here where, from a scoring perspective, and we know on FanDuel, touchdowns carry a lot of weight because it's only half-point PPR. So anyways, where I'm going with it is I think the double stack may be a little, maybe stretching yourself a little bit from this game. Obviously, anything can happen in an NFL game, but I think there's enough other spots that we don't want to lock ourselves into. Now, if we get to a spot, later in the build where JSN fits in as that last wide receiver or flex spot, then that makes sense. But I don't think we want to force it to build to start here. So, I've looked at the running back spots, and there's just like kind of a lot going on. With Pacheco is out now. Mixon, I don't expect him to play. And the Vikings defense has actually looked pretty solid so far. Like I'm not trying to get into those backfields, I don't think. It's interesting because, you've got Barkley and Bijan, I think, and Kamara, like those three really stand out at the high end. And then there's a lot of so James Conner, even Josh Jacobs, what appears to be somewhat tough matchups. J.K. Dobbins has started out really hot. I had him as like a sell high in our daily dose, our fantasy football newsletter that came out today. So I think running back it's getting a little tight this week just with the way things fall. So I think what I want to do is let's just put Barkley in there, and we can adjust if we need to. I just want to build with the idea that we're going to take one of those high-end running backs. I do think it'll be kind of unique. People like to use their salary judiciously, I guess is how I'll say it. I don't think that with Achane and Barkley both at their price points being among the, they're both over 7,700 and 8,700. I don't think there's going to be a ton of builds that have 2 running backs in those price ranges. We can adjust from Barkley to Bijan or Kamara later if we want, but let's start here and see where it goes from there. Going through the wide receivers, there's the guy that I keep coming back to that, like, I don't know. Actually, you know what? Let's go with
Shaheed.
Well, no, let's go first Godwin. I don't know how he's still priced here. He's the wide receiver 1 through 2 weeks. He's like, they told us what they were going to do, and now they've done it. And he's their Cooper Kupp role. He is the underneath guy. They play the Broncos this week. Broncos defense hasn't been bad. They've actually been decent against the run. Patrick Surtain is like a shutdown corner. He is locked up George Pickens this last week, did a nice job on him. Week 1, locked down DK Metcalf. So I think Mike Evans is probably in store for another long day just because Surtain's likely to match up with him on the perimeter. So, yeah, I love Godwin. Let's go with that, and then I'll throw it back to you.
We've been talking about Godwin since week 1. I mean, he's been in some of my lineups every week. Solid. The coach speak turns out to be true so far with the Cooper Kupp role that he's assumed, or he's gotten back to, in essence, historically, as he's viewed as a receiver. I said Shaheed just because that'd be a skinny stack with Barkley. That would be a way to kind of have exposure to that game on both sides of the ball, since the Saints are clearly so far, kind of not what we expected necessarily from their offense. And so got to start paying attention to it a little bit. There was another interesting game I had a skinny stack for. That's definitely not going to be a focus game this week, but it was just based on the pricing. And that was Jaden Reed is ridiculously 5,700 this week. Seems really low on Jaden Reed. Malik Willis looked better than most people expected last week. My skinny stack idea there would have been Jaden Reed with Tony Pollard, now that Spears is injured and questionable, and Pollard's been getting the bulk of the workload anyway. He's been looking really good so far this year, kind of spry. But another option, we can maybe on another lineup. But yeah, always like Godwin. Definitely don't need to bring him back with anybody. Denver's offensively has looked dismal so far. Bo Nix, going to take some time to figure it out, I think. So yeah, Godwin's as solid as they come. His price doesn't seem to ever shoot up too high on FanDuel like Evans. I completely agree with you, Surtain. That's going to be a challenge for Evans this week. But yeah. So defense too, I have in mind is we talked about the 49ers offensively, but a good way to get exposure to that would be their defense. Playing the Rams without Kupp, without Nakua, completely hampered. That would be one of my favorite selections for defense this week.
So I think when we're building this lineup, right? So we start with the Geno, Metcalf, Achane grouping, and Geno, Metcalf are fairly reasonably priced, but when you add that nearly 8K Achane to it, it's a little bit on the higher end as a cumulative stack. Then if we're going to go, if we have Barkley here, I think that for defense, we need to go down. We got to be sub 4K because looking at the state of the slate, the tight end position has been something this year. But there is not there aren't good cheap options, I don't think. And there is enough. You look at Kelsey, Kittle, Laporta, I'm not high on, but Kelsey, Kittle, McBride, the Baltimore guys, Bowers, Pitts, even Goddard with AJ Brown out. There are so many, we're going to have to spend up there. So I think we have to spend down at defense. I'm going to push back a little bit on you. I like the Titans defense. They've been really good through 2 weeks.
I do too.
And I actually don't think Malik Willis looked good.
Okay.
Reed only had 2 targets. I think Willis, I'll pull it up, but I think he only threw for like 100 yards. There was a lot of, how do I say this? So when it comes to like backup quarterbacks, and especially backup quarterback like Willis, who is kind of unique and he's very different than the Jordan Love, than the Packers' normal starter. So yeah, Willis was 12 for 14, 122 yards and a touchdown. Colts offense was bad. Their run defense, they got just destroyed by Mixon in week 1, and then they got beat up again in week 2 by the Packers. Josh Jacobs went off. There's like an element of surprise where like it's really hard for that defense. They're not a good run defense anyways, and it's hard to prepare for like what this Packers offense was going to do and how they're going to do it. Now there's film on him. Now Willis has got to play not in the friendly confines of his own Lambeau Field. He's got to go on the road, and he's actually facing a team that nobody knows him better than the Titans, right? He got traded there from the Packers before the season. So I think this is like a perfect letdown spot where he could really be exposed. And like, I live 45 minutes from Lambeau, and everyone around here is all jacked up and like, yeah, that was great. But it's like, okay, like the buzzsaw is coming. You're going to remember why you miss Jordan Love. That's kind of my expectation anyway. So long-winded way of saying we're going to pay down at defense. We're going to target the backup quarterback who kind of played above his head. He had the perfect like setup last week. Could lean on the running game. Opposing offense didn't push him. So anyways, let's go with them. Then see where that leaves us with just under 6,200 for the other 3 spots. So I guess, is there anyone that you are interested in at the lower end? Otherwise, who are among these top guys? Is there anyone that stands out to you?
And good point about I'm fine with the Titans defense too. Actually, I was mainly noting is Jaden Reed for his skill set at that price is just in general in a vacuum is pretty low in my opinion. But yeah, no, it's definitely viable, the Titans defense, and it's good that we see things a little bit differently. We've been pretty much in tune the first 2 weeks. So yes, I definitely have a lean. Now we actually have 13 games, not 12, because we have the Sunday night to account for. And a perfect way to kind of do a place marker, as I like to call it initially, is skinny stacking that game with Kyle Pitts at tight end and Carson Steele in the flex as probably the starting running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's $5,200, basically a free square. And that gives you exposure to that late game. Also, depending on how your team is doing leading up to the 4:00 games, you may have some, I guess you probably don't have so much room based on those prices to move stuff around too much if you had to. But I feel with Pitts, it's like, sooner or later he's going to have a week that's fantasy goodness worthy. Mm-hmm. You can attack the Chiefs in the tight end area of the field typically. Cousins, they started to look, obviously that surprising win based on the Barkley fumble. It's another reason I like Barkley too, probably. He's going to want to make up for that mistake this week, albeit Saints are tough. But so yeah, Pitts and Steele would be a leaning to get exposure to the late game that you obviously don't have on DraftKings. And what does that leave us with in the last spot? I'm looking at 7,100. So I think it's a healthy salary to neighbors I see there, although Cleveland's kind of tough. So, I mean, and then I don't know where Samaji's price is as opposed to Steele. It's kind of the double-edged sword there as far as who's going to – Carson Steele will probably be the early down role and Samaji will be on the passing downs. But so that on the face of it, I thought about that. Maybe I'm being bullish with Pitts because he hasn't really – he's another one of those maybe get in early for the game that he is going to explode. At home in Atlanta, coming off a big win. Sunday night, a little more time to prepare. But I'm open to anything if you're not seeing those two as ideal enough in those spots.
Um, I think Steele is a little thin. I think you're very reliant on touchdowns there. Barkley last week, I mean, the Eagles rushing attack did well, but I think that my read on everybody's worried about like how are they going to replace Pacheco? I think they're going to replace Pacheco by throwing more. They week one, they played the Ravens. There was a couple turnovers and they had a couple big plays early. They kind of held the lead. Their play total was very like the Ravens ran like 85 plays and the Chiefs ran like 55 or something. It was very skewed just because of the way the game played out. And then week two, they played the Bengals, who their run defense got crushed by the Patriots week one. Week two, Bengals defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo has kind of always had Mahomes' number and Reed's number kind of, even if they don't beat him, they make things a lot more difficult for him. And so it really, their run rate, it was like 50-50, their run pass split, even though they were trailing for a lot of the game, just because the Bengals kind of forced them that direction. So like, I think that the way that I think they're going to have like a very pass heavy attack, especially relative to what we've seen the first 2 weeks. So my lean here would be instead of Steele, looking at like Xavier Worthy at 6,000. Rashee Rice, his price has gone up a little bit, 6,300. He's still in a good spot. But if we want to play that late game, I like going with Worthy here and kind of playing his upside. And I think that like with jet sweeps and he has so much, he can get there a lot more ways. And when you look at, if we're going to play Steele in the flex, if you were going to play a guy like Carson Steele, I guess I'll say it this way, I would want to play it on a build where he is my second running back. So I'm only playing 2 running backs. I think that when you playing him in that third spot, especially with his price, like it's not like you can even like swap depending on how things are going, because there's nobody priced below him that you would consider. So let's do this. So let's put Worthy in the flex.
I would counter too. Carson Steele will definitely be the goal line guy if they're obviously short.
Yeah, but I don't think. I mean, they've been struggling to run the ball near the goal line, anyways.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is you're banking on the touchdowns, and we know how. Like, think about over the years, like the different ways that they run those tight end screens, the little gadget plays. Like they're just so creative and all over the place. Like, it's not like a lot of teams where it's just like, okay, they hand it to the guy and he runs up the middle. And I definitely don't. I mean, it could happen, but like, what's the upside? He has like 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. You know, I don't see like him as like I like guys like last week I played Brian Robinson. He had 1 catch at 140 yards. Now that we have the 100-yard bonus too, a guy like Steele has less value because he's unlikely to see the volume and efficiency to get a 100-yard game. So, Robinson had a very good game without scoring touchdowns. And those are the types of guys I want to have, are guys who, even if they don't get that touchdown variance, they don't crush your lineup. Where like Steele, if he doesn't get touchdowns, he's getting you like 4 to 6 points. So, again, it depends on the lineup. So if it was, if we were going to have a bunch of stud receivers and then we needed a cheap running back to fill like the RB2 spot, that makes more sense to me. But if we put Worthy in, what that leaves us is it brings us back to a guy that you talked about before, Rashid Shaheed. So we get him opposite Barkley, and it kind of fits in perfectly. So, I would say with the Worthy Steele discussion to kind of round that out is like the low end outcome for both of those guys is they score like 3-4 points. Worthy had like a down week last week. The Bengals kind of schemed him away. It's the same low end outcome for Steele. Now the high end outcome for Worthy is like a 25-30 point game, Sunday night hammer, like wins you the slate. And I think the high end outcome for Steele is like 16-18 points. So again, I don't think Steele's like a bad play, but the way it fits in with this, I like that a lot. And it brought us back to what you talked about before with Shaheed. 6,300 looks like he's got like he's more than just a deep threat now. They're like scheming him touches. So he's got a little more stable role there. So what do you think? We're getting just over 30 minutes. So quick thoughts on the lineup.
I love it. It's a good adjustment. We're definitely building for ceiling. Definitely a ceiling team here, which is good to not always maybe wind up on more of a floor or median. And then also a good reminder for all of our FanDuel players, because I'm still getting used to it. You do have to account for the 100-yard, the new bonuses that are now part of the game plan, so to speak, in your roster building. So definitely don't forget about it. As I'm saying this to myself, be aware of that when you're, making final decisions on selections. So yeah, no, I definitely like it. That's a cool team here.
Yeah, the one honestly, the one that I'm struggling with the most maybe is Godwin. I love the player, and for that price, I'm curious to see where ownership comes in with them. I just am a little like the Broncos have been so bad. Like I just look at that because I don't know if Godwin, did he even have a catch in the second half? I don't know if he had a catch in the second half against the Lions. The Bucs offense just they couldn't protect the quarterback, and they kind of just like sat on it a little bit. Didn't really do much in the second half. So I'm slightly concerned with Godwin that if the Broncos offense, which has looked just absolutely terrible, that if they lay another egg, that Godwin kind of fizzles out just because there isn't a need in the game environment. So if we did have a spot that I was worried about, that would probably be it.
Right around the same price, you have Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
That could be a possibility with Debo out.
Yep. So, yeah, or Waddle there if you wanted to go with a different running back. Anyways, lots of options as always. So, all right, I guess that will do it. We're gonna go and bing some more on week 3.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone for watching. Make sure you check us out, oneweekseason.com. Check out all the rest of the DFS Lab series throughout the rest of the week. I am Mike. He is Steve. And we will see you next week.